Hey everybody, I'm Allegheny County Executive Sarah Enamorado. Yes, I look different this month, but it is Black History Month.
Hi, I'm Allegheny County Executive Sarah Enamorado. To celebrate Black History Month, I'm talking to some of our most accomplished leaders here in Allegheny County about their stories and what has shaped them to be the leaders they are today. Today, I'm sitting down with my forever sister rep and Congresswoman Summer Lee. She and I ran together in the State House in 2018 and served together in Harrisburg until she became our Congresswoman representing PA 12 in 2023. Now that I'm 1 year into my first term as county executive, and Summer just started her second term in Congress, a lot has changed in 7 years, and we have the opportunity to catch up. What comes to mind when you think about Black history in the context of Allegheny County and Pittsburgh?
Oh my goodness, that's such a hard question, right? Because there's actually a huge and great wealth of Black history here in this county. I think about the Hill District. Mm-hmm. You know, I think about the Crawford Grill, and I think about the fact that we had two Negro League baseball teams that were both excellent. We had some of the best baseball players that ever walked the earth play right here in Pittsburgh or in Homestead in the Mon Valley. I think about the Mon Valley, right? Yeah. I think about the history of U.S. Steel, and I think about the role that Black folks played in that. Which we know is, not just a role in building this region, but the entire country. I think about the jazz renaissance, the music renaissance that moved from the historic Hill District. I think about some of the greats that came through Westinghouse, for instance. These are parts of our history that a lot of people don't know in the region, and I would love for them to know it more, to know the names behind, Kelly Strayhorn, who are the people behind that, but behind the August Wilson Center. There's so much. So I don't know. I think about that when I think about Black History Month in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. You are proudly from the Mon Valley. What is some things that you want people to know about your hometown?
I am. I'm from North Braddock, where grew up. My family's from Braddock and other parts throughout the Mon Valley. It's so funny because when people say, when we joke about people who claim cities that they're not actually, they're like, oh, you don't live in this city. And I'm proud Mon Valley. I'm like, no. You're not downgrading me, actually. I love the Mon Valley. Mon Valley, I think a lot of people know about the Mon Valley. Again, like I mentioned it when I talked about that Black history, right? The Mon Valley is where we had all of our robber barons. So you think about that part first, right? I think about the fact that, in Braddock and in Homestead, we have the first and the second Carnegie libraries. Braddock, of course, has the first. I think about the steel mill, obviously, that has run continuously since like 1800. Even, as we've gone through controversy and continue to go through, challenges, it's an area that has lasted, right? It's a people who are resilient, who have contributed to history and just want to be able to keep doing it from the area that they lived in.
What are your hopes and dreams for the Mon Valley and for Braddock specifically?
I think that every community should get the opportunity to turn a corner and to survive, right? I think about so many of the post-industrial communities, around the region, not just our region, but Appalachia, around what we, sometimes some people call disparagingly, other people call lovingly the Rust Belt. These towns that, when industry collapsed or when they left, these people had to leave, or the people didn't have the things that they wanted, right? I think about gentrification and the ways that they've come in and they've reshaped communities that had rich histories and culture. I want for the Mon Valley, just like I want for every other place, everywhere, right? I want for them to be able to sustain themselves in the place that they love, that they've called home for generations. Some people who have lived there generationally. I want them to be able to continue to build and grow, and for their roots to continue to nourish next generations. I want for them to be able to have jobs and homes and houses, right, in that community where they don't have to go elsewhere. They don't have to feel like they need to be connected to different histories to have pride, right? I think that there's so much worthy of, pride and celebration. I want us to be able to refocus on that and build from that foundation, right? Not the foundation of, the trauma, right? Not the foundation of what people see on the surface, but the foundation of what's actually there and the people who have remained.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's incredible people who are in the Mon Valley who are working hard each and every day to realize that vision that you shaped. You know, speaking of legacy and, you know, looking towards the future, I think when we look towards the future, we also have to look back in the past and see where we've come from. So talk about your family and like the history that your family has in the civil rights movement and how that's inspired you and your work today.
You know, when I think about, you know, the civil rights movement, I think there's so many different roles that people play in it, right? There are the big names, the brand names, you know, MLK. You know, I think about Dorothy Irene Height. I think an unsung hero from Rankin, from my community, who, you know, Barack Obama called the godmother of the civil rights movement, all from our region. And there are those folks, but then there are also the people who play roles, right? The people who are just servant leaders. They show up to the NAACP meeting and they run it and they get the things done. They show up and they do membership drives to make sure that the Black community stays connected to each other and to, you know, the world around us. I think about, you know, people who continue legacies in the background. So my grandma obviously is a person like that. You know, she was one of the leaders in the NAACP here regionally. And I think that that's where I kind of got my fire from, right? It didn't come from nowhere. You know, this urge to carry on this civil rights movement. When I was a kid and people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said I wanted to be a civil rights activist. I know, right? So I wanted to be a civil rights activist, and I don't know that I knew what that meant. Yeah. You know, I don't know if I knew what the job was, like, does it pay? You know, but I knew that I wanted to be somebody who continued to hold America and help America become that more perfect union, right? To live up to its ideals, to continue on a pathway to rectify the past, but make us and get us to that place of excellence, right? That is that promise. And it's something that I always want to do because I saw people around me doing it in little ways, right? Not everybody who contributed obviously contributed on the front lines, right? Though we love the people on the front lines. Not everybody who's contributed to this more perfect union did it as organizers. Some people just did it as a single Black moms, right? Who knew that she needed to make sure that her kids had the best opportunities they could possibly have. That if she had to conjure them, she would do that, right? I think that is a huge contribution, you know, to the civil rights movement coming out of our area. So I think that I try to model that so that people know that you don't got to be Dr. King, but each of us can do something. You too, county executive.
Thank you. I will keep that in mind. You talked about, you know, having the legacy of folks who've come before you and that kind of fueling your passion and desire to do your work today. Who keeps you going? Who is, you know, your mentor, your inspiration? How do you do this job each and every day and do it with such clarity?
Ooh, okay, so I think the who keeps me going are the people, right? The people. I think about young people. You know, both of us, we've had the opportunity to go to like a lot of schools. We've been in schools, right? We've been at summer camps. We've, you know, had young people who've interned with us, worked with us in different capacities. And when I see them, I think about what it means to still have a vision for the world that is just unfettered. It's not limited by, you know, society, who's, you know, people who all love and respect to generations before us, but once you get to a certain point, you stop being able to imagine and to see an expansive world. But these young people can still see a world that is so more expansive than what we've ever, you know, imagined. And I think that is the blessing of every generation behind you, is that they build on a vision of a universe that, you know, the generation before us couldn't believe. And that keeps me in the race because I'm like, we're holding space. We're holding space, like with Wicked.
Our first pop culture reference.
Our first pop culture record. We are holding space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity, which I truly believe the young people of the next generation will do. But I have had people who have poured into me, absolutely, and shaped me. The thing that honestly keeps me going, you know, in a place like DC, and before that in Harrisburg is, you know, a desire to leave the place better than when I got it. And I think you have that too, right? We know that these systems weren't built overnight. They're not gonna be dismantled overnight, but that we have an obligation and a responsibility to do everything within our power to leave it better for when these next folks get here. And then I think about the people who came before us who did that, right? I think about, you know, your John Lewis's, obviously. I mentioned Dorothy Irene Height, you know, from my neighborhood, who showed us that, like, girls from the Mon Valley can, change the world. I think about Miss Alma Speed Fox, who passed quite recently from the Hill District. Worked in the Hill District, doing incredible work in Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Civil Rights Movement. I think about Barbara Lee, right? Who I call my auntie because of my name, who was. When I think about Dr. King, he talks about the three evils, poverty, racism, militarism. I think about how Barbara Lee used her platform in Congress to combat each of them in every single vote, even when she was the only person to do that in a vote. Yeah. So I was really grateful to be able to overlap with her for one Congress and be able to learn from her. And who she learned from is Shirley Chisholm. So I feel like I'm in the lineage, I feel like I'm in the direct lineage of Shirley Chisholm, and I feel like that might be slightly arrogant to say, but there's a lot of weight to it. But I think it is true because we know what she stood for in Congress. We know the barriers that she broke not for herself, but for the people again who came after her. So I think I'm very grateful to learn from the people who she taught, and that feels like she's my spiritual mentor.
Yeah. Congresswoman Summer Lee, unbought and unbossed.
And unbossed.
It's much like Shirley Chisholm. Before I ask this one, I want to kind of dig into, legislating is difficult. You and I were in the State House in the minority. I want to dive into kind of what issues you like to work on and, the vision you have for a legislative agenda, were you to be able to get into the majority. What would you like to see happen in DC?
Oh man, it is my greatest wish that one day I live to a majority. I don't want it to be written in my book that wherever she went, she brought a minority. What I care to work on, I think that what we as a movement care to work on, it transcends whether you're in the minority or the majority, how big or how small that majority might be. I think that if we are working towards true progress, racial, economic, justice, those are really important to me. I think that they go hand in hand. I think that as we look on these, really difficult times, and I think that America sometimes, I think we have been taught that our strength comes from, our military might. It comes from our manpower. But I think that what we're learning in this moment is that our real strength or weakness, if we don't hone it, is in our own divisions that we allow to persist, whether that be our political divisions, but truly our racial and our economic ones, that we absolutely can. That there is no reason why we cannot have a society, a country, where we've eradicated poverty, where people are housed, in the communities that they call home, where we no longer have the lingering effects of racial injustice that just embeds itself within our systems. So as a legislator, those are the things that I care to work on. I think they're really foundational sometimes, to say that I need to work on racial justice, right? That it's embedded in, the fabric of our society, which means that it's not gonna be 1 or 2 generations. It might be quite more. And that we have to chip away at it. Environmental justice, I come from the Mon Valley. We have some of the worst air quality in the nation. And that's saying something. We had some of the worst air quality in the nation while LA was on fire. Yeah. That it still persisted as among the worst, which means that we have to be urgent in addressing it. We have to be urgent in our approach to climate change, to climate justice, to making sure that impacted communities are actually a part of the solution. And I think that finally, legislatively, policy, my bigger goal was to make sure that we're bringing the people back into these processes, right? That we recognize that working people have ideas, they have perspectives that inform our legislative process, and that we can tell that they're not there because of where we are in our policy, right? Because of where we are in our lack thereof of progress. So those are the things that I try to work on. I would love to work on them from a majority, but I also know that, the reality is that it's always going to be difficult, It's always going to be difficult to work on those things. So we do them wherever we are.
And I know you've been an incredible partner to my administration in year 1 in helping us bring back money for affordable housing, addressing homelessness, economic development, combating climate change. So, you and your office have been a tremendous partner in all of these different areas that I know.
It's amazing when government works together, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's why I was so excited, right? That we have your partnership, right? But again, a new perspective, right? The perspective of women, of young people, of working class people, not just in our legislative roles, but now in our executive offices. And that is an opportunity that I don't know that Allegheny County realized we would even get.
Yeah. Yeah.
We better use it well.
Yeah, I mean, the political powers have shifted significantly over the last couple cycles, and our elected offices look much different than they did just 5 years ago. So let's wrap up. I want to know, what's the message you want the people of Allegheny County to know this Black History Month?
I think my message is often the same. I would say a high tide lifts all ships. We have to internalize that. We have to move past this idea that we can only be a city, a county, a region for one folk at a time, for one community at a time. That is so untrue. In fact, it's the exact opposite of what we need to, the direction that we need to go in. When we have served the least of these, when we have included and centered them in our policies and our politics, when we have considered the things that have kept them back, I assure you, I promise you, Allegheny County, that we will all be better off, that we will all rise collectively. So I think it's so important that we just cut through the noise. We're gonna hear so much, right? When I think about Black History Month, I have true earnest fears that Black History Month, as we know it, that initiatives to combat racial injustice and inequity will not exist as we know them anymore. There are real attacks on them. There are very real attacks on our history, on our ability to read books, right? Attacks on the most marginalized. There are attacks on initiatives to make sure that Black and brown folks are represented in jobs, on campuses. We don't know what our country is looking like. There's no guarantees. So we better fight like hell. We better fight like hell that it looks like the people who are actually in it, that it looks like the vision, the ideas, the values that we have, that we espouse, because there are people who are fighting against that. And it doesn't mean that they're not winnable, that we can't get them back, but it does mean that there are people who have scoped out America's weaknesses. America's weakness, our natural fault lines, right? We're in an era where people don't have to, they don't have to attack us with weapons. They don't have to attack us with armies. They're attacking us with our own insecurities. They're attacking us with our own racial division, our own class division, with our own political divisions. And if we don't get hip to that really quickly, America will look different than what it was. There ain't nothing to go back to. And it will look differently than what it could have been. So I think in Black History Month, I hope that we reflect on that.
Yeah. Well, Congresswoman Summer Lee, thank you so much for sitting down with me, and thank you for leaving us with that message of solidarity.